7 days ago, I locked my pantry door, put my wallet in a drawer, and made a rule. Nothing goes into my kitchen that wasn't already on my shelves. No grocery runs, no delivery, no exceptions. I wanted to find out what actually happens when you live entirely off a prepper stockpile instead of just talking about one. Not a simulation, not a list of what should work. 7 real days, tracked, and I'm telling you exactly what broke down, because some of it did. Day 1 started easy, almost suspiciously easy. Breakfast was instant oatmeal with powdered milk and a spoon of peanut butter stirred in. About 420 calories, took 4 minutes including boiling water on a camp stove. Lunch was canned chicken over white rice with a bouillon cube for flavor. Dinner was black beans and rice again, this time with hot sauce from a packet I'd forgotten I had. Total calories for the day, roughly 1,950. I felt fine, a little smug, honestly. This is the day everyone assumes the whole week looks like, and it's the day that gives people false confidence about their own stockpile. Day 2 is where the first real problem showed up, and it wasn't food, it was variety fatigue. Same rice, same beans, different can of meat. By dinner, I genuinely did not want to eat what was in front of me, even though I was hungry. This is the palate fatigue phenomenon I've mentioned in previous videos, and living through it is different from explaining it. I caught myself eating slower, smaller bites, leaving food on the plate that I would have finished without thinking on day 1. Calorie intake dropped to around 1,700 without me deciding to eat less. It just happened. Day 3, the cooking method became the bottleneck. My propane canister ran lower than expected. I'd estimated 4 hours of cook time, and I was already past halfway by day 3 from boiling water for coffee, oatmeal, and rice 3 times a day. This is a math error I see constantly in prepper content. People calculate calories and completely skip fuel calculations. I switched to cold prep meals for part of the day, canned tuna straight from the pouch, crackers with peanut butter, to conserve fuel for the days I knew were coming. This wasn't in my original plan. It was a real-time adjustment forced by a gap I hadn't accounted for. Day 4 was the low point of the week, and I want to be honest about why. It wasn't hunger. It was decision fatigue and food boredom compounding at the same time. I had calories. I had protein. What I didn't have was anything that felt like a meal instead of a ration. I made the call to use one of my morale items, a Nutella cup I'd stocked specifically for a moment like this. And it mattered more than the math would suggest. 20 minutes later, my mood had genuinely shifted. This is the part of stockpiling that doesn't show up in any calorie spreadsheet. Psychological sustainability matters as much as nutritional sustainability, and most prepper content ignores it completely. Day 5, I caught a mistake in my own setup that I'd never have found without actually living through it. My water storage plan assumed I'd be drinking roughly half a gallon a day. I was closer to 3/4 of a gallon, partly the heat, partly because I was eating more sodium than normal from bouillon and canned goods, and sodium increases thirst. If this had been a real 14-day scenario instead of a 7-day test, I would have run short on stored water by day 11 instead of day 14, purely because my baseline estimate was wrong by a category I hadn't tested under real conditions. Day 6, things stabilized, but not because the food got better, because I adapted. I stopped trying to make rice and beans taste like a restaurant meal and started treating each meal as fuel with a 5-minute psychological reset built in. Black coffee, a moment to sit down, then eat. That mental shift did more for sustainability than anything in my pantry. Calorie intake came back up to around 1,900 for the day. I wasn't enjoying the food. I was no longer fighting it either. Day 7, I finished with food left on the shelf, which tells you something important. I'd built my 7-day test stockpile based on the calorie math from an earlier video, and I came in underconsumed by roughly 8%. Not because the math was wrong, but because palate fatigue naturally reduces intake below the theoretical target. That's actually useful information. It means the standard calorie calculations most people use probably overestimate what you'll actually eat in week 1 of a real crisis, and underestimate the psychological cost of getting there. So here's what 7 days actually taught me that no countdown list ever could. The food held up. The calorie math held up, mostly. What didn't hold up on the first try was my fuel calculation and my water estimate, 2 things you cannot find by reading a list, only by running the clock. And the biggest variable wasn't nutritional, it was mental. A single comfort item on day 4 changed my entire trajectory for the rest of the week. If you've built a stockpile and never tested it, you don't actually know if it works. You know if it looks complete on a shelf. Those are different things. I'm linking my full day-by-day log and exact item list in the description if you want to replicate this yourself. I genuinely recommend trying it for at least 3 days before you assume your setup is solid. If you haven't watched the pantry audit video, that's the one that explains most of what went wrong with my fuel and water estimates before I even started this test. Link is below. Next time, I'm running the same test for 14 days instead of 7, because that's the number that actually matters.